to Friday Night Lights. It's going to be like a little mini episode.
Supplement.
From Rob, Tom, and Ethan.
Three amigos.
We're just going to probably do a few of these every so often. Just like kind of story-based, because we don't want to be just news.
Yeah,
We're
I wanna have a
not
chat.
just a news channel. Have a little chit-chat. Join us. Be the fourth man in our conversation.
Oh, I
Or
like
woman.
this.
Or woman.
We accept all here.
It's 2018, remember?
It is 2018. This episode, we're just going to kind of talk about kind of maybe our first memories of wrestling, or like how we got into wrestling. Because I guess we didn't want to be that one that does like, when was your first match and what did you first remember? But
What was your first
with us
time?
being new, kind of makes sense just to give people background on where our like love for wrestling comes from.
There's a lot of people who've listened to the podcast and they're not necessarily wrestling fans.
Definitely.
And it can seem a little strange
A little bit
from
alien
the
to
outside
people.
looking in.
Definitely.
I think people see it very black and white, kind of
Yeah.
like, well, it's not real, why do you watch it? It's like, yeah, we're
There's
very
more
much
reasons.
aware
There's-
of that,
yeah,
but
there's
there are
there's
a lot of
deeper
reasons.
reasons to it, isn't there?
So,
I think the reason we're kind of thinking about doing this as the first one is because Rob was saying earlier that with Super Showdown just being gone, Taker was your first wrestling memory, wasn't he?
Yeah. I'm trying to put a year on it. It's probably like 93, and it's really weird. It's not like my first memory of wrestling isn't actually watching it; it's hearing it. Where I used to live on Norfolk Park, there were these masonettes, and next to our masonette there was a little
Did all the lights go off and you had a good big gong?
you know, not too far off that. You know, not too far off that. There's a little sort of field next to our house where we used to play football, and one of the houses, they had these little balconies that kind of looked onto it. And I remember this neighbour of ours had Sky Sports on when very little people did have Sky Sports, because it was the early 90s and
Right,
it was really new and it was expensive.
Still
and,
is crazy.
And it still is. But I remember just hearing, not even the music, that the match was on, and I could hear Vince McMahon shouting, you know, The Undertaker, and I'm like, what is that? What is he listening to? It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And you just heard all this cheering and this, you know, the banging in the ring and the commentary and the just sort of over production and the over excitement of it all. And I just remember hearing that, and like we talk about sometimes, you know, you talk about your top five, and there tend to be positions 4 and 5 are interchangeable with depending on how you're feeling that day.
Yeah.
But my number one for me has always been Undertaker.
Yeah.
Still
Yeah.
to this day, even when we watched, you know, Super Showdown the other week, when that music hits, I still get, you know, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's still that. I like all the new stuff. I like it how they're just, you know, a wrestler is a version of themselves turned up to 11.
Yeah.
But there's not much of that that's still a gimmick.
No.
And not a gimmick like
None of
you used to
characters
have.
are anymore.
No, not a character like, you know, in the early 90s where everybody had a job and you would have, you know,
Duke
Dumpster Drosy and the
Repo
Goon
Man.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Tugboat and Earthquake and all that kind of stuff. It was that character that still is kind of outlasted all that.
Absolutely.
Breaks the mold with The Undertaker as well, because it's
Absolutely.
like he started playing a funeral director, but he's got that darkness and that kind of like real badass element to him as well. Like so much of himself is in that character, like the tattoos and the biker element, and obviously that came more to the fore later on. But you know that, you know, he's huge for one, but on the other side it's like this guy's just like a big hard goth.
Yeah.
And it's like Undertaker's just, you can't really, when you kind of rank him above the greats, it's like you can't. He's almost in a different conversation because he's just in a league of his own. Because no
He
one
is,
else
and
is like him.
he's not, you know, he's not the most talented. He's
No.
not he's not like a CM Punk or something. He's certainly not like a Kenny Omega or a Okada in New Japan. But he's
Different time though for that.
it is a different time. But he's just something above that.
Yeah.
This character that you just get drawn into watching. You can't stop watching it. One of the first sort of matches I remember seeing was the $1 Million Man thing where Undertaker had gone missing, and then $1 Million Man said, "Oh, I've got him. I've
Well,
got my own," and there was
fake
two.
Undertaker's
The
very
fake
good.
Undertaker match
Yeah.
was just,
Very good.
and the match itself wasn't great.
No.
But I remember just sit there watching it, thinking, I don't know who's who. I don't know what to. I don't know
Yeah.
what to happen. But just being so engrossed in it
Totally.
that
Totally.
I loved it. I loved it, and I still. I mean, the older you get, and the more into it you get, the more you really sort of research into wrestling, the more you get into it for different reasons. So I mean, we like it because we like the politics of it all. We
Yeah.
like, you know, the stories like that. You know, you wrote a piece about it not long back. How
Radio magazine, RGM Press.
I suppose the term that we said was no one wants to see how sausage is made, but it's actually more interesting.
Yeah, I
it's
love that,
crazy.
yeah.
The things that go into it that brings this end product out.
And I think Taker's like an embodiment of that. I saw Undertaker for the first time not too long ago, probably a few years back, at a Raw show in Manchester where it was the Wyatt family that was still feuding with
Yeah.
him. And I had, like, it sounds
Spooky,
stupid. It sounds really, really stupid because it's not real and it's just a man. But when the lights went off and the gong hit, and then Taker and Kane both walked out, which was like the first time the two had been seen together in a long, long time. And again, it sounds ridiculous, but I had like tears in my eyes. Like it was an unbelievable feeling to see that in person. Just him walking out to that music, and I get it. Before then, because I didn't grow up in that time of Taker and stuff like that, I didn't really understand the hype behind him and things. But when you see it in person, it's like I can't explain that feeling.
It's the way they used to sell it. I'd listen to commentary, and he'd be making his entrance, and you'd hear Jim Ross saying, "Oh, it's getting colder in here," and I'd believe that. I'd believe,
you would.
wow, I bet it does. This sort of dead man, as they call him, is he doesn't sell any moves. He just he sits up when you think he's out, and
It was just so cool.
What
Just
about,
so cool.
What's your first kind of memoirs?
Mine's it's a weird one because mine's definitely before my time age-wise in terms of like, it's like Hogan Savage, WrestleMania 5. Like I remember I had that on blue VHS.
Yeah.
And I don't even know where I got it from, but that's the only like wrestling VHS I had when I was a kid. Like for the most part, probably when I was about maybe like 5 or 6 or something like that. But I remember I think it was my uncle bought us one of them blue Hasbro wrestling rings with the little dinky figures.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah.
probably from a second-hand shop or something like that. But I was like, this is just the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Like little superheroes, like little He-Man toys. Then I found out they were actually real. And it's like, Hogan was like my guy. And it's just so because I imagine, if you throw a crowd of wrestling people and like the majority of them are going to be like, yeah, Hogan was my guy. Like, absolutely love Hogan. But, I still, even though all the controversy around him, I still have like a thing where it's like, I watch the old Hogan matches, and yeah, they're not great wrestling, but it's just the way he has that crowd in his hand.
palm, yeah.
Absolutely, like it's just it's the most typical, basic kind of formula for a wrestling match. Like I always think it's like Ryu in Street Fighter. He's got all the basic moves, but he's just brilliant.
Yeah.
He's just badass.
Yeah.
So yeah, I suppose it was like Hogan was really what got me into professional wrestling, just because when he was doing it, like they didn't present it in any way as like kind of like a work. It felt real, like he was wrestling at Trump Plaza. They had like you said, the press conferences we talked about in the other episode. It's like there was a certain element of reality to it because he broke beyond wrestling. But then I suppose moving from there, like it wasn't like readily accessible until the Attitude Era hit.
No.
And that was when I kind of like really, everyone at school was talking about it. You had the sticker books and you go down to the video shop and it's like they had a whole section for wrestling. So you'd have like Deadly Games and No Mercies, and like you had all these different events, and you could just like pick them up and like consume as much as possible, because we never had Sky, so you could never watch anything live, and like you have to sit up till a ridiculous time in the morning, so you wouldn't be allowed. But that's kind of like when I started getting back into it, and like The Rock took over as my guy.
Yeah.
Because you could only get WCW intermittently, and even though Hogan like was always still my favorite wrestler, like I knew he was in WCW, I didn't really want to watch it because I know he'd gone bad, so that like cut me deep. But yeah, like I suppose Hogan was the guy that kind of got me into it, and then yeah, from there I just followed the typical thing, Attitude Era, but just never got off it through to Ruthless Aggression. And I say my peak of my fandom was probably during the Ruthless Aggression era, like maybe like 2001, 2002, or maybe
Yeah,
that a bit
probably
too
about
early. Yeah,
about that time.
I like the kind of, when you had your Eddie Guerreros, you had the card was probably more starting it's ever been. You had like Jericho, you had like Evolution coming up through there.
Yeah.
You had like John Cena was kind of breaking out. Undertaker was still kind of American badass, but yeah, that's kind of like, I suppose that's more my era, and I was like just peaked out when it was WWE ECW, and that's when I could start to relate like all the like deathmatch stuff, all the ECW stuff, like dabbling in a little bit of kind of I suppose you'd call it tape trading back in the day, but like not only, it was more just like buying as many DVDs off eBay as I could.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's just been kind of obsession ever since, really.
Yeah.
What about yourself, man?
For me, it's kind of like what Rob was saying. Actually, I think I first heard wrestling before I saw
Yeah.
wrestling, because in our household, still to this day is the exact same. But the only thing that's ever on the TV is Sky Sports.
Yeah.
Like, my dad just has Sky Sports on constantly, and I must have been like crazily young, but I don't know why. And one thing that sticks out is probably sat on the floor playing with something or doing something. Dad was flicking through the Sky Sports channels, and he stopped on a SmackDown episode, and The Rock was just making his entrance, and I was listening to like The Rock's theme song, and I just remember hearing that like huge pop and The Rock's entrance theme playing, and being like, that is really cool. Like whatever that is brilliant. I don't know what it is, but it's brilliant. And I remember like seeing The Rock walking down, and I was like, that guy doesn't look real. Like he looks like a superhero, like you were saying about like little figurines. Actual first like visible wrestling memories, I guess, would be like probably John Cena.
Yeah, he'd have been your generation's like Hulk
generation.
Hogan, I suppose.
Yeah,
like
pretty much.
or
Like
The
again,
Rock,
probably early to mid 2005, 2006 when I first started paying attention to it. Because
Yeah.
nobody in my family watched wrestling. My
No.
dad, granddads, uncles didn't. None of them watched wrestling, so I had no
Yeah.
access to wrestling until that kind of stage of it. But then I kind of fell into, when I first found out about wrestling was again the peak of the internet, was like as big as it ever has been.
Yeah.
And I went back and watched a lot of like the old 90, 98, 99 kind of stuff. And that's where my love came from. Like I think back then Triple H, Mankind were like my two favourite wrestlers.
Sick.
My dad bought me Andre the Giant figurine for a birthday or a Christmas. And I remember like going back and looking up Andre the Giant and thinking he was incredible. Like, again, looking now,
Awesome.
awful wrestler. Like
Yeah.
probably not awful wrestler, but not in the standards of today's wrestling.
Yeah.
But just seeing him as a real human being and being as big as he was and doing what he did, and I was like, this is absolutely incredible. But I guess Triple H, kind of like Randy Orton, they were the guys that got me into it. But it's interesting, like, to look, I guess, kind of like looking back against you two, because I am considerably younger.
Yeah, a little bit.
I'm not going to say how old
It's
I am.
about 15 years.
We've got like a generational slide.
It's interesting,
Yeah.
like, but it's good. I think it works well.
Yeah.
because
It's interesting
nice.
because you say like you looked back at like 98, 99 and that whole kind of attitude era thing. I remember that. I remember rushing home from being out with my friends on a Friday or whenever it was to watch Raw or something when it was shown again because I wanted to see the whole sort of Stone Cold and Vince McMahon thing. The whole the Undertaker and Mankind series that they had, the Boiler Room Brawl match, the King of the Ring with the cell that's infamous.
Yeah.
Watching all that first time round was something that you'd never seen that before.
No.
But you just think it's normal, but
Yeah.
there's something about it that you just watch and you think, well, I expect this all the time now, but you don't realise how much that they push that bar up
Oh,
How good
crazy.
it was.
for those
I mean,
matches.
Yeah, I think the generational gap between us all
crazy.
is interesting because it's like we all have a different love for wrestling, a different reason
We'll need
why.
to talk at some point about when, like, because you always have that feeling in the back of your head, this ain't real, but it's like, when does that actually pop in your head, do you know what I mean? Like, I remember being super invested fairly late, like, even when Kane first unmasked against RVD, and I remember watching it, I think it was probably about, like, year 7 or something daft, and I was still, like, I still had a feeling like...
I was in a bar in Coventry when that happened.
What,
So
when he
took
mate,
his
you were in a
mask
bar?
off. Do you know? Because I'd gone away with work to set up a new shop at the company I was working with in Coventry, and we were in this bar afterwards because there's nothing else to do and we don't know anybody.
Yeah.
And they had Sky Sports on, and I remember seeing that and thinking it was such a big deal that he's took his mask off. And I'm trying to tell people around me like,
Blew my mind.
look at this, and everyone's just not interested whatsoever, and they want the football on, and I'm.
Marking out.
I'm, this excited 18-year-old lad who's thinking I probably should be doing more with myself than this.
Brilliant.
one.
Yeah.
Totally. No, it's weird. I don't think I ever thought wrestling was real, and I don't know if I did or not. I'm sure I did at some point, but I don't think I ever had it in my head that I think I always knew that it.
Yeah, I
wasn't
think
a
there's
real
always
sport.
something where you're like, I kind of know this is fake, but there's part of you where you go, I want to believe it could
Yeah, of
be
course
real.
there is. Absolutely.
Like,
It's almost like you know it is.
Yeah.
And the more you're into it, the more you invest in it, the more that you figure out that they plan the matches out. But for me, it was always how I still
yeah.
don't understand now when they're like, oh, we'll just call a match on the fly. I'm like, how?
How'd you do that?
How
No,
do you
totally.
do that?
Yeah.
You
I
must
think-
be in training, or we have obviously they have NXT and stuff, and they have developmental stuff now, but you must be in that for years learning how to do
Of course
that.
you are.
It's like a weird language. Like, you think, like,
It
if
is a
these
language.
guys went, like, completely, like, if they were in a pitch black room with headphones on as long as they could kind of touch each other, they could probably communicate perfectly well. Just the way they can construct these stories. And it's like, yeah, there'll be a bit of talking under the hair, and when they're like, but the amount they're breathing, and they're like, when they're getting put through things, and there's all sorts of set pieces, and you just think like, there's just this little unwritten kind of click between the two. And I mean, you get guys like Macho Man who plan a match from start to finish, every single move, but a lot of the guys are just like, we'll just call it in the ring and see where we go.
We work
Like,
out a few big spots and just work around them. But if I could recommend anything, I'd recommend get on God, I don't know how you'd find it, but just search Stone Cold podcast. He talked through his match with Brett at WrestleMania 13, and he also talked through his match at X7 with The Rock. And if you can play the match, like get the podcast, get on the network, and start at the exact same time.
Oh wow, okay.
And you can
like a listen along almost.
So
you can
good.
listen to Stone Cold explaining why they're doing what they're doing and things like that, and just to hear his, like, because you watch it and you're like, they must know, they just must have planned it. But when you're listening to the reasons why they do what they do and why they move where they move, and like why they go to the table but don't do anything at the table, like plant that seed and come away from it and come back to it later on. And like they're going drinking water whenever they can. Like if they get hit near the table, they'll get down underneath the table, get a bottle of water, get a swig when they can, and just like he was saying, like how he breathes heavy and he looks gassed, but he's totally fine. He could still go another 55 minutes, but he looks like he's tired, and this is why they're doing it and things like that.
I suppose it's really crazy how when you're younger and you really are into it, you don't believe that it's fake or it's planned.
Fake when you watch it.
It's all real, and then
because of the way that it looks.
There's a brief for me. There's like a 2 or 3 year period when you realise it isn't real, that you just fall out of love with it because everything that you knew was a lie and all that kind of thing.
Christmas, isn't it?
But then when you
it's
figure
shattering.
out how it is done, and then you get into the politics behind it all, and the stories of what happens and why certain decisions get made, that for me is when I get really reinvested in it.
'Cause it's interesting.
And I always think if I was for any reason to be involved with that kind of business, I wouldn't want to be a performer. I'd want to be in the back. That's
More
like
interesting.
I want to know what's going on behind that curtain, not in front of it.
I think the two things that I'd put to people who maybe like kind of don't understand or would like to understand would be the film Beyond the Mat, as well as Mick Foley's Have a Nice Day, because those two, like that book combined with that film, give you an insight that actually these guys live a far more interesting life than the characters they play, and the stuff that they do is actually just beyond comprehension. Like, how do these people? Batista recently did an interview with Sport Bible on YouTube, and he said, like, the wrestling business killed my marriage because I was on the road for 300 plus days a year. I maybe saw my wife once in a calendar year, and it's like that's just a small part of what that business does to these people.
That's the thing. You think they only work a Monday or a Tuesday, and then once every month they'll work on a Sunday night. You don't realise that, while they're joint pay-per-views again now, but when they were split and there was a Raw and SmackDown pay-per-view, if the SmackDown pay-per-view is on, let's say it's Backlash, and that's the SmackDown pay-per-view, the Raw brand are doing a house show somewhere. So they're not.
They do house shows.
They're
like
everywhere.
4 days, 5 days out of the week, and the 6th and 7th day of them weeks, you can't get home and get back because they're moving on to another town that's close. You can't fly home in that amount of time and then get back to the shows again. You have to be on the road all the time. I think the biggest thing I would say to people, because as like Tom was saying, there's a lot of people that are listening to this that probably don't watch wrestling, but are just supporting us, which is lovely.
Very nice.
I would say, give it a chance, like watch it and try it, and just go in with the mindset that you're not. They aren't trying to trick you into thinking that it's real.
No.
I think a lot of people go into it thinking, they honestly think, and I think this is real, and they're doing this, and they're hurting each other. They're not trying to do that. Like, you don't watch Emmerdale or EastEnders and think, them bastards are trying to have me on.
Someone made a really good point once about how
it's a soap opera, isn't it?
Yeah, someone made a really good point to me once. They're saying you wouldn't enjoy a football match if the two teams before knew who was going to win. And I can get that, but as long as I don't know who's going to win,
it doesn't matter.
I'm not interested. I want to see how they're going to tell this story, how they're going to get to that end, and then whenever the eventual winner wins, I'm not thinking, I'm so glad that John Cena beat this guy. I'm thinking, wonder what that means for him. What's the next step then? Where's he going to go after this?
You ever watched the film Goal?
Yeah.
It was, whatever his name was,
Santiago Nunez.
In that film, it's a strange reference, but you know who's winning. Like, you know who's going to win at the end of that film. But I can guarantee
like
you,
Rocky,
a lot of football, exactly the same as Rocky. Yeah. You watch Rocky as you're a boxing fan, you watch Goal as a football fan, you know who's going to win the games, but you don't think, oh shit, because I knew Newcastle were going to win at the end of that. Like, no, you watched it because it's an entertainment product. Like, don't go into wrestling thinking they're out to get you, because they aren't.
And
just
No one's
appreciate it for
no
the
one's trying to
sport
convince
it
you
is.
that this is a real,
No.
legitimate sport.
It's a dance. Literally, it's like a dance. And it just involves a lot of hard hitting things
Yeah.
that do hurt. Like people always go, "Oh, you get hit in the head with a chair, and it'll hurt you." It's like, no, it does. And you fall on your back from a 4-foot drop. It's gonna hurt. Like, don't think that it doesn't hurt you. But again, don't go in with that mindset that it isn't real and they know who's gonna win. Just go in with a mindset that it's an entertainment product that's gonna like fascinate you in what they're doing.
I think on the back of what you said earlier, at the very end of this, if people do want to check out a match, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret Hart,
WrestleMania.
my personal recommendation for if you
Probably
want to watch a
mine as
wrestling
well.
match and enjoy it
Yeah.
and let yourself get taken away, I can't think of a better match that you can just lock into, see a story unfold, and just be thrilled from start to finish. It's got a
Absolutely
bit of everything you need.
Yeah, just
So
go into
yeah.
it with an open mind. Don't watch it expecting anything. Don't
Mm-hmm.
go in expecting to see them talking to each other behind the hair, or go into it like looking for like fails, or
Yeah.
like, oh, they messed up there, or they messed up there. Just go in with a completely open mind. Treat it like a boxing match. Treat it that it is completely real. Treat it that you don't. They
let
don't
yourself
know
get
who's gonna
taken
win.
away.
Just
Just
let
enjoy
yourself
it for what it is, I
Enjoy
think,
it for
isn't it?
what
Yeah.
else, 20-minute match, 25-minute match, probably.
Yeah.
Just let yourself loose in it and see what you think. And if you don't like it, get
Cool.
it. I totally get
Yeah,
it.
it's fine.
But,
More
like,
wrestling for the rest of us.
You'd be yeah, there is, but you'd be surprised. I think you'll definitely be very surprised.
I think as well for people who go to live shows like we do, not necessarily WWE, but we go to Progress. We've got a Defiant show going to this week.
Yes.
We've been to Ring of Honor before. And we've always kind of thought, like, when we're watching it on TV, like, well, you could probably just hear him. The guy, you know, and we sit front row for these matches, so we can probably, before you go to these, think, well, I'll hear him calling the spots out. I'll hear him telling him, all right, do this, and I'm going to do that.
Nothing.
I don't think I've ever heard that.
No.
I can't think
I'm
of
sure
one.
I probably will at some point, but nothing
Maybe
that
I've
ever take me out of
just
a match. Yeah,
discounted
you
it,
just don't care
but I
for it.
don't think I can consciously think back now and think
No,
I've
me
watched
neither.
a match where we've been literally we could reach out and touch the ring, where I've heard them call spots to each other and decide on a finish, or even hear the referee say, right, we're going home now, we need to finish.
No, I mean, again, I'm sure it has happened to me. I'm sure I have heard it before, but again, it would never take me out of a match to the point where I'm like, oh, I just fucking heard the finish.
But that's a credit to the guys performing.
Absolutely.
As much as it is, you know, at the independent level that we watch than the, you know, big WWE pay-per-views or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
I probably heard it more actually, probably being picked up by
From
the
John
cameras.
Cena.
I probably heard it more. I remember hearing the Rousey's first match at WrestleMania, where there's a spot where she has Stephanie McMahon in the corner and she's going to throw a judo throw, and you hear Ronda Rousey say, right, I've got you, are you ready? And even though I'd heard that, I thought, I'm still really enjoying this.
Yeah.
I'm still really sold on
Yeah,
this.
you just can't let it bother you too much. That's what it is. But no,
You're
it's
almost glad to
interesting.
hear it in a way.
Totally.
You're
Like,
almost glad
it's like
because
interested, isn't it,
it's
a little bit?
interesting, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. And it's
Yeah.
that behind the fourth wall kind of thing that you get into, and you the more you're into it, the more you get into that side of it, and that's for me is what is more interesting.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
are certain decisions made? Why have you chose to push this guy? Why do you keep pushing Roman Reigns
It's
when
like,
the crowd
it's like
don't like him? What is it
people who-
about it?
Yeah.
People who'd like to break down, say, like Marvel movies or something like that.
Yeah.
Why are these decisions made? What does that mean? What does this mean? It's like we look at this kind of live theatre version of a superhero movie, but it's just set inside a ring. And we like to analyse, like, who's the next champion? What have they got going on for this guy? Why has this guy's push been kind of muted? What's going on backstage? And it's nice to take all that in. And then at the end of the day as well...
It doesn't
like-
ever detract from the matches.
No.
It never detracts from anything that we're watching in the ring.
Yeah.
It just helps your decision making or your kind of understanding of where things may be going from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely. But yeah, that's just a little snippet, kind of like a mini episode to lead you into your weekends, from Rob, Tom, and myself. If you want to hear more from us, check out at the Lights Pod on Twitter, Staring at the Lights on Instagram. Check us out on rgn.press for more things that we've written about and stuff like that. And I'm sure we will see you very, very soon.
That's totally